Good evening. Welcome to ISD 191 is Legislative Committee meeting. I am Leslie Chester, Chair of the Legislative Committee. Present with us is Director Hume and Director Werb, along with Assistant Superintendent Brian Gersich and our Director of Communication, Aaron Tingenberg. So welcome everyone. Looking forward to hearing what is our only item on the agenda tonight, which is looking at a draft of what we as a district would like to have as our priorities for our legislative agenda. So I will hand it off to Aaron.
All right, thank you very much. I am going to pull up that document, which is a draft legislative platform. Just share it with the group. Are you guys seeing that now? Nope. Okay, hold on.
It's loading. It says you're starting to share screen.
Okay, hold on. Let's try that again then.
It was loading.
Let me know when
there
it's
it is.
up.
It's up.
Right. So yeah, so this is just a draft document trying to describe the priorities set forth by this committee, talked about by this committee at the last meeting. There were 4 primary priorities. So there's a little, sort of discussion paragraph here just about the reasons for it and why we have a budget platform, or I'm sorry, a legislative platform for the district at all. And then very broadly, these first 4, the 4 items are labeled here: increasing per pupil funding by 2% per year, reducing the cross subsidy for special education and English learning, provide targeted funding to increase diversity among teachers, provide a legislative exemption specifically for our local need. That's the front page. And then in the back page goes a little bit more into detail on each of those items. And the narratives are, I pulled either from our discussion, from AMSD and MSBA type platforms, or again, from conversations we've had as part of this committee in the past. So I'm happy to take any questions or try to answer any questions. Otherwise, it's really your platform. So whatever you need, we can make adjustments.
So Scott or Anna, do you want to comment or ask questions, provide insight?
One thing that I noticed that kind of jumped out at me is I like the 4 priorities. I don't disagree with them. But 1, 2, and 4 all talk specifically about kind of the situation in 191 as to why we are advocating for that. And the third one doesn't really, like, it talks about in Minnesota, only 4% of teachers are teachers of color, but it doesn't really, like, what does that look like for our district? I think would be helpful to include in that, just partially so that it's consistent with the other points. And also, I just think it's important information to have as we are potentially talking to legislators to kind of show what the current situation is here in 191.
And it's just for your information, you maybe know this already, but it's very much the same. About 4% of our teachers are also people of color.
All the more reason to maybe even just say in Minnesota and in 191 even would be, just so it's very clear.
Yep, perfect.
And then I noticed this is like a more of a Darcy Schatz level grammatical nitpick. We all know she loved those. On the second one, it seems like there's a missing word. Without an increased special education and English learner funding, it should probably say without an increase to special education and English learner funding.
Yeah, or without an increase in special education.
Or in either, yeah.
Yeah.
There's a short word that probably should be added there. But otherwise, I thought it looked really good.
So since I'm new to this committee, I just want to clarify that, so these are specific items that we work specifically with legislators on. These are the 4 items that we've chosen to work specifically with our legislators in our district on specific to our district.
Yes, and then also as we're maybe participating or doing advocacy like on the Hill, so like because I think like the MSBA might has a day on the Hill in March, or some of the other education activity on the Hill. These would be things we'd be this would be kind of a tangible thing we would bring to meetings with them so that they understand our platform and priorities and then here kind of outlining these are why these four are pertinent. Not in, I mean, in addition, we are as a district and a member of like MSBA and AMSD are also wanting to advocate for the priorities that they have several listed. We just wanted to highlight four here that were really the four we wanted to focus on.
The ones we feel would have the biggest impact on our district specifically. Exactly.
Right.
Yep.
And I think
then-
it's also worth mentioning that our December and January meetings, we had our recently elected or re-elected state representatives and a couple of the state senators also attend
Yep.
our meeting, and we kind of started to fill them in on a lot of what became the platform, or is becoming this legislative platform. So we may want to do some follow-up with them once this is finalized to make sure that they have that information. And I think
And
at least one of the representatives hasn't attended one of our meetings yet.
Yeah, but
Senator
I've been
Ford.
working with
Right.
Jamie to get that scheduled. And I'd like to
Okay.
see if for any reason Angie Craig is available because she is
Sure.
our
Congresswoman.
congresswoman and has such a connection to education, like being
Yes.
able to hear from us so that if there's anything that could be done federally, here's our platform.
And she has talked in the past specifically about special education funding.
Right.
I went to one of her town halls. It was actually probably about almost exactly a year ago. I feel like it was in February of last year. And that was
Oh.
one of the big topics that she talked about, was her desire to ensure that the federal government is funding special education at the rate that they once upon a time promised they would.
So then how do we then tie back like specific bills that are already in the works that correlate to what we've identified in our district?
I think that's where we would look to some of our senators and representatives to understand what bills are on the on their floor, and then being able then from our platform to cite the bills in here might be
Okay.
some addendum. The other thing too is that this is a tool we want to engage and activate our greater community in as well. So like when we want to do calls out to support, it's like contact your legislator. Here are our district's talking points for you to make those calls, because there is movement on a particular bill on the floor. And then just one other note, kind of going along with what Scott was saying about our platform number 3. I believe we have, maybe it's something within our strategic plan or goal about diversifying, making sure we have a diverse workforce for our students as well. And it'd be nice to even cite that this is also an addition as to why it's a priority for us too.
Yeah, just kind of cross-reference basically that, yes, this is a value or priority for us. Yep, that's great. And, adding on to what Leslie was saying about how we'll use this, we'll certainly, assuming the board adopts it, at that point, we'll do some sort of news release. We'll include it in a newsletter. We'll send it out to key communicators as well. And just, it's a kind of a statement of, here are our priorities, here are our values as a school district.
And there should be a link or a landing spot on our website too, to draw people to with the social media posts so that we can direct people.
Aaron, do we not have more current numbers around the cross subsidy? I'm just noticing it says in 2017, 2018, the cross subsidy was $12.7 million. I know it hasn't changed. I don't think it's changed a huge amount since then, but if there is a more recent date, that might be another helpful improvement.
I'll
Maybe that's the
double-check.
most recent we have with, I know, audits and things
Yep. I'll
don't
double
always
check
follow
with-
the regular calendar.
I'll double check with Lisa and see if we have a more recent number, but I think you're right. It probably is a very similar number right now as well.
Right. Even if the amount is the same, if we can say that
Haven't
in
we?
2019, 20 or 28, like more recent, the better, I think.
Okay.
Can I ask just a couple of quick questions after review? Is that all right? Aaron, just the first one is just your opinion, just as I read this, to make sure it flows and sends the message that we want. When I see item 2, the second sentence, these services which are mandated by law are essential for supporting the individual needs, just knowing that within some of our departments, they want to just make sure that the real reason we do it is because it's the right thing to do. And the second reason we do it is because it's the law. And just, you're the communications expert. Is the order in which that's written emphasize the point that we like to make, that we do it first because it's the right thing and it's mandated by law? Just when I first read it, these services, and the first thing I read was are mandated by law. And I just, maybe that's the right way it should flow from a communications perspective, but just for consideration. We always like to lead with our why in that is because it's the right thing to do. The third point is because it's the law, and kind of a thing. So just for consideration, I'm not asking that it be changed, just if that's the right order.
That's certainly the intent. The phrasing using which makes that the sort of, I forget what the right word is, but it's the subordinate clause of that sentence. That said, we could change the order so that are essential for meeting the individual needs of students is the first thing you read.
Yep.
I think that makes sense.
I figured that was logical, but just wanted to put that out there just because I know that that's the cross subsidy becomes a debate because it seems like it shines a light in an area that isn't deserving necessarily of that light. It's the funding that we need to properly serve. The other question I had is, as I read this the first time, 1, 2, and 3, just as a standalone, and again, I know I haven't been in this committee, it makes sense to me. I can read it and I get the why. But item 4, I read it and I know it because I've been here, what you're asking, but I don't see a why. Does it need to have a compelling why when it's going to be in your statement, or an inferred why, so that it isn't just an ask, but it also parallels everything else that says point, or, problem resolution kind of a thing? Just again, for feedback and consideration.
From my perspective, I think, yeah, that's a good idea. I'd probably look to this committee a little bit for how we'd want to phrase that. What came to my mind was local control and flexibility, that those being sort of the underlying reasons for why that's necessary. But I'm open to whatever wording the committee likes.
I think that's a good start. I also think we've phrased it in one of our board workshops. I think we talked about how it would allow us to continue to provide services and support for all of our students and our teachers and staff in the district by having more of that money in the general fund. I'm paraphrasing, but Leslie's nodding her head, so I must be paraphrasing it somewhat accurately.
I think so. Yeah, because it's hard because being so more internal to kind of understand the objective with selling to say that this is, because in practice any sale of property needs to go against debt, and so like why wouldn't just be in the general fund? And so yeah, I don't how to do that to help everybody kind of understand the why without trying to maybe go into the intricate detail of how property sales within a district work.
Right.
Yeah, maybe something at the end of that sentence that says, transfer to the district's general fund, allowing them to, or not allow again, but allowing them to, or ensuring that they directly impact students by supporting programs and staffing in District 191 along those lines.
Yeah, something like that, I think.
Okay.
And then the goal would be, if we're in agreement on this document, would be to move it to a board agenda for new business to be then shared and voted and approved upon, correct?
That's my understanding of what would happen, the next steps. And I do think, I'll have to look back, but I do think it was a new business item, not a consent agenda item, but a new business item. So that,
yeah,
I think you're right.
Yep, it would be new business. because it would be nice to then have that presentation for the public to see too, and then have that board
Yeah.
adoption. Yep.
Yep. So I think is it February 25th then would be the next meeting when
Yeah.
we'd be able to bring it.
Yeah, possibly. Yes. Let me see. Because I think
That is the next thing, but I don't know. Yeah.
Jamie has some of the meetings drafted. So let me, while we're chatting.
Well,
see what
in any
might be
case, I'll bring
available.
it to Dr. Battle and see, and the board officers can decide which next meeting to put it on.
Yeah. If not the 25th, then whatever the first meeting in March would be. Yeah.
Yes.
But basically as soon as possible.
Oh,
I think so.
Yep. Oh, no. So it is on new business for February the 25th.
Oh, it is.
Yep, it is.
All right. Super.
Yeah.
It's good because the sooner we get it approved,
Yep.
with the
more-
legislature already being in session, right?
Yep. And then especially because right around the corner in March is when a lot of the days on the Hill and the activities with
Right.
legislatures happen. So it'd be nice to have this at the ready, knowing that some of this may not be in person, but here is the attachment or something that can be embedded in an email that you can send your legislator. Here's a sample script of what can be in an email to your legislator, things that can be built from this document for sure. Oh, wonderful. Any other thoughts, comments, edits?
None from me.
All right. I lost my place. Anything from you, Anna? Well then, Erin, you'll make those changes to have ready for the February 25th meeting, and you'll help co-present this then to the board.
Yep, I think that'll be the plan. If I can present it, and then obviously you can speak to it as well at that time, and you'll see it. You should see it in the packets the weekend before, so as soon as Thursday or Friday next week.
Okay,
Fantastic.
very good. Well, if there's any other new business or anything else I need to chat about, I'm hoping that we'll get a few more meetings. So especially with maybe if we can get on Angie Craig's calendar or the other state representative or senator that we have missed. I know we've met with my two in my area.
Lindsay Port is the one that I know
Okay.
has not, because she's my senator, and also she was going to come to the meeting in December and had to cancel at the last minute.
Okay.
So
hopefully we
I think
can.
everyone else has come.
Yeah. So hopefully we can bring them in to meet with us, and then we can then.
That was going to be one of my questions, is like how flexible are they as far as being able to meet with us?
What they told us in January was because of the pandemic and they're doing everything from home, it's actually easier right now than it has been in other years.
So have you met with Sandy Mason?
Yes.
Yes.
She was I think she was at the December meeting.
Yeah.
Okay.
And she was the one, I know her really well. We talk often, and she was very, very much excited and kept asking for our district to create a legislative committee. So she's probably one of the big advocates or pushers to make sure that we establish one. So
Okay.
Because the other district in her district has had one for many years.
Right.
So she wanted us to have one as well.
Yep. She's been a very active supporter. I think she even attends most of our student graduations or tries to, and other activities. She's been very out of, like, in comparison to like Senator Carlson, who's my senator too. She's been far more active with our district.
I was able to meet and have a very long conversation with her at our mixer. So, and I've actually, at Blue Cross, we did a Capitol tour, and I actually went to her office. So she's kind of near and dear to me as well.
Yeah. she's wonderful. I knew her when she was on the Egan City Council before she went for state representative. So yep, no, I value her engagement with us for sure. And hoping that we see especially some of our newly elected people, they seem very energized too when we met
Enthusiastic,
with them.
yeah.
Yeah, very enthusiastic. So we'll definitely, once this is approved, make sure we circle back around and follow up with those that have met with us already for sure, to say here's our materials and our platform, and was one of our newer representatives or senators on the education committee?
I don't recall, but maybe.
Kayla Berg is on the Education Policy Committee.
Oh, there you go. That's what I was thinking of. Okay. So we might actually have another internal advocate that actually has maybe more swing.
So I do, now that I'm sitting here and thinking, I do have one thing I want to ask about, and just forgive me because, I'm very green. So as part of the number 3 and the diversity and increasing diversity in the teacher workforce. And I know that there's that Teachers of Color bill that's out there right now. And I know when Scott and I were attending the leadership conference, there was some presentations on some of the legislature that's coming up and some of the bills being presented. And I did ask about, so I know they talk about the last in and first out clause that's in contracts, and how they talk about how there was some legislation, I think, passed a while ago where that can be removed from contracts, but they tell you to negotiate it with your unions. Now, I don't know about you, but I don't think that unions are too keen on wanting to negotiate that out. I feel like it's more of something that needs to be passed as another piece of the law. How likely do you think it would be to have somebody that would be on our side to fight something like that? I mean, is that totally out of the question because you're going against unions? I just find that as long as that's in a contract, it's going to be a deterrent, and it's going to be difficult to keep teachers of color as long as you keep that clause in a contract. Any thoughts on that?
No, I'm in total agreement.
It's a very complicated issue, and I think that law that you're referring to was passed before Leslie and I were on the board. But just from my observation, it definitely, I think, contributed to some of the very challenging contract negotiations that we had the year before Leslie and I were elected. But
So-
that was one of the big sticking points at that time, was that new legislation that you were referring to.
Right.
And I wonder with negotiations happening, if it's not still just an effort to have the conversation, just to kind of say that we believe we all are interested in making sure that we diversify our workforce, and that we have teachers of color, more teachers of color, more representation of the students we're serving in leader, in positions. And how do we, looking at how contract language is set up, work towards changing that? Because right now, and if we keep moving forward as is, we're not going to achieve our goal. So how do we talk together about ways to address it? I'm not sure. I haven't sat in negotiations or understand how the contracts are set up, or if that's really a stuck point.
I'm officially on that team, so I guess I'll be learning that side of everything, and hopefully gain some insight and knowledge on how to best work on that. I hope. I just feel like there's very much room for discussion around that. And how do we get there, I guess, is just the question.
Right. Or changing where that's the last option when we're looking at if we have to make shifts in employment employees or if we're facing with a financial crisis where this kind of usually comes up, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Lisa, do you have anything to add? Because I know that you know a little bit more, or Brian, in contract work, or
No, I think you guys have hit it as to what the big sticking point was the last time. And I think it's been a struggle because that first in or last in, first out approach that PELRA calls for makes it very tricky to retain our people of color. And so I don't know what the answer is exactly either. I hear what you're
guess
saying about the union's approach. Yep.
That's why I'm asking why. So why? And that's, like I said, just my lack of knowledge around the topic. But is it something that can be brought as a? I mean, when they passed the legislation, why did they not go as far as to say have it removed, like making it law that it can't be in the contracts? I that's what I guess I'd like to understand. And if that is something that it's because you can't force it out, is it not allowed? And is it because that's how strong the union representation is, that they have lobbyists themselves that don't allow it to be? Yeah.
Yeah, they're pretty strong on that lobbying.
Okay. It's, I feel like it's cutting off your hand to spite your face, how do you have a real conversation that persuades people to understand why it's not conducive to keep that in there? I mean, I don't know. I guess we just can't at this point.
Certainly it's been a long debate, and you're talking about it again, and certainly some of those are things when you localize it to the contract that come up as a part of your negotiations, meetings, and strategies, whether on the committee or you go into closed session as a team to talk about what those things look like. I think some of the complexities that they look at with LIFO too is if you suggest take it out, what is in its place sometimes will come up as a question mark. And how are those decisions then made to ensure that they're not done simply based on finances, because we still have collectively bargained agreements and salaries are still on the higher end for more experience. That's a part of that process. And if you're going to have an equitable system, I realize it's coming up in the context of the fact that we want teachers and to retain our teachers of color so that we have a more diverse workforce, but then it also becomes, if you're not going to use that as a basis for your decision making, what is the equitable basis for your decision making? And I do think that's where sometimes it comes in of, are the rubrics being used with fidelity when we have 8 elementary schools and all of those things, and if we make decisions based on evaluations, how do we make sure those are all done consistently across the board? It's just one of, I'm sure, many things that you hear is not just about should we change the system, but also the debate about if we change, to what do we change? Sometimes it causes that fear too.
Right.
You're right. Well, I think that was where the sticking points seemed to be. Again, just from reading in the paper 3 or 4 years ago, that seemed to be what the issue was what is it being replaced with?
And there's variations of if you base it off of performance or whatever, how is that measured? Or is there consistency, kind of like you were mentioning, Brian?
Right.
How is it measured to really make that evaluation happen? So yeah, it's I don't think it's an easy solve.
No.
If it was, it would have been solved long before Leslie and I were elected, like decades ago.
Right.
It feels like decades ago.
Exactly.
It would have been solved decades ago. Yes, that too.
It is a quandary. So I guess we just, look at options, I guess, we can't, I guess we keep trying.
Yeah, I
And-
think it's worth bringing up for discussion, just to say that we know this is on everybody's radar. It's a priority. It's something that we all value. Let's see if
Right.
there's any way to have dialogue around it to maybe determine what change can happen, or if change can happen this time, or
Well,
how do we progress for change. And then if there are any new bills coming up legislatively, what can we then add here in terms of our advocacy too?
Right.
And I was just going to note that, that might be the two sides of this are what's done here as part of this committee is focused on the legislative, what can be done legislatively to address issues around diversity in our teaching staff. And then the negotiations committee, of course, has to handle negotiations when it comes to contractual stuff.
Wonderful. Well, we'll keep working as a committee, and if there's crossover or however we can help lean on one another, we'll definitely continue to do that in our different committee services that we have. But I do look forward to having this go to the board meeting on February the 25th, and that we can then start movement and getting this out to our legislators and our community to do our advocating that we need to do to benefit our students and families in our district. So if there's nothing else, I believe we are adjourned.
Okay.